Alfie asks some boys and girls about their favourite hobby. He shows the results on a graph. The graph shows that 44% of boys chose sport. Estimate the percentage of girls who chose sport. So we can see on our bar chart that with each line we go up 10% because we have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and so on. So we want the percentage who chose sport, and we can see that that's the dark grey section of our bar chart. So let's look at the bar for girls. The dark grey section starts at this point here, so that's between 30% and 40%, so 35%, and it stops at this point here, so that's just above 60%, so maybe 62%. Now we want to know the percentage who chose sport, so the percentage that's grey, and to do that we can find the difference. If it starts at 35 and stops at 62, we can work out 62 minus 35, and that tells us that 27% of girls chose sport. Now 120 boys chose reading. Estimate the number of boys who chose cinema. So reading is the white section of the chart. So for boys, we know that this white section stands for 120 children. So this point here will be 70%, and that means 30%, so the difference between 70 and 100, 30% is the same as 120 children. Now we want to know the number who chose cinema, so that's this section of our chart here. We can see that that's just above 10%, so maybe 12%. So we know that 30% is 120 because we know that 120 boys chose reading, and that takes up 30% of our bar chart. So if 30% is 120, how can we work out 12%? Well, 12 isn't a factor of 30, but what we can work out is 3%, because if we divide 30 by 10, we get 3%, and then we'll be able to work out 12% from that. So 30 divided by 10 is 3, 120 divided by 10 is 12. So 3% is the same as 12 children. So to work out 12%, we can multiply by 4, because 3 times 4 is 12. So if we multiply 12 by 4, that tells us that 48 boys chose cinema. Megan goes on a walking holiday for 5 days. The table shows how far she walked on the first 4 days. Megan says, "My average for the first 4 days is more than 15 kilometres. Explain why Megan is correct." So the average is the same as the mean, and to find the mean, we add up the total and then divide by the number of things that we have. So we can work out 14 plus 23 plus 13 plus 13, and then divide that total by 4 because we have 4 days. And 63 divided by 4 is more than 15. In fact, it's 15.75. So that's why Megan is correct. And notice, though the question says, explain why, we don't have to use lots of writing or sentences. We can explain using numbers. Now, Friday is her last day. She wants to increase her average to 17 kilometres. How many kilometres must she walk on Friday? So she wants the mean for 5 days to be 17. So that means the total amount that she walks divided by 5, because there are 5 days, will need to be 17. So what divided by 5 is 17? Well, if we work out 17 times 5, that gives us 85. So for an average or mean of 17 kilometres per day, Megan will need to walk a total of 85 kilometres. Now we know that she's already walked 63 kilometres on her first 4 days. So how much more will she need to walk so that she's walked 85 kilometres altogether? Well, 85 minus 63 is 22. So she will need to walk another 22 kilometres so that she's walked 85 kilometres altogether, and then 85 divided by the 5 days will give her a mean or average of 17. Complete the number sentences. First, 3/4 divided by what equals 3/12. So we can remember that when we're dividing a fraction by a whole number, one way to do that is to leave the numerator the same, and we have the same numerator here in our question and our answer. So leave the numerator the same and then multiply the denominator by the number that we're dividing by. So 4 times what is 12? Well, 4 times 3 is 12, and that means 3/4 divided by 3 is 3/12. The numerator stays the same, and then rather than doing any actual dividing, one way to solve this is to multiply the denominator by the divisor, and 4 times 3 is 12. Now, something divided by 5 equals 2/13. So here we have a missing number division problem. And when the first number of a division problem is missing, one way to find the number is to work backwards and multiply. So we can find our missing dividend by multiplying 2/13 by 5. Remember, when we're multiplying a fraction by a whole number, we only multiply the numerator and the denominator stays the same. So we have 10/13. Look at these equations. A equals 2b, b equals 3c. Which equation below is also true? Put a ring round the correct one. So that's A equals 6c, because if b is 3c, then 2b or 2 times b will be 6 times c, because if we double 3c, we get 6c. And because A equals 2b, and we know that 2b will be 6c, that means A must be 6c as well, because A is the same or equal to 2b. A shop makes 100 sandwiches. All of the sandwiches are either cheese or tuna. Some of the sandwiches also have salad with the cheese or tuna. 30 sandwiches have cheese with salad, 15 sandwiches have tuna without salad, 75 sandwiches have salad. How many sandwiches have cheese without salad? So let's use a bar model. We know that there are 100 sandwiches altogether, and 75 sandwiches have salad. So if 75 have salad, that means 25 don't have salad, because 100 minus 75 is 25. Now we know that 30 sandwiches have cheese with salad, 15 sandwiches have tuna with no salad, tuna without salad, and we want to know how many sandwiches have cheese without salad. So all of the sandwiches are either cheese or tuna. So if there are 25 sandwiches with no salad and 15 of those are tuna, that means 10 must be cheese, because 25 minus 15 is 10. So 10 sandwiches have cheese without salad. Here is a triangle on a 1 centimetre square grid. What is the area of the triangle? So we find the area of a triangle by multiplying the base by the height and then dividing by 2. So we can see that the base is 5 centimetres and the height so the distance from top to bottom is 3 centimetres. So we need to work out 5 times 3 divided by 2. 5 times 3 is 15, and 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. So our area is 7.5 or 7.5 centimetres squared. 15 divided by 2 is 7 remainder 1, but then we need to extend with a 0.0 to write our remainder 1 in front of the 10th digit, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5, so we have 7.5 or 7.5 centimetres squared. Put brackets into this expression to make it correct. So we have 10 squared divided by 10 divided by 10 divided by 10 divided by 10 equals 100. So we can remember that we do what's in brackets first. And if we place brackets here and here, we have a correct expression. Because 10 squared means 10 times 10, so that's 100. And 10 divided by 10 is 1. So if we have 100, 100 divided by 1 is still 100, divided by 1 again is still 100. Circle the biggest fraction. So to compare fractions, one way to start is to make the denominators the same. So we could think of a number that's in the 6, 5, 4 and 3 times tables. So 60 is in the 6, 5, 4 and 3 times tables, so we could find equivalent fractions for all of these which have a denominator of 60. To find the denominator, it's a good idea to look at your largest denominator and then count up in steps of that. So we could try 6, 12, 18, 24 and so on, but the smallest number that's in all of the other times tables as well is 60. So we could do that, or we could solve this question in a different way, because we can see that we have improper fractions. So let's first change these improper fractions into mixed numbers. 13/6 is the same as 2 and 1/6, because 13 divided by 6 is 2 remainder 1, and the denominator stays the same. 11 divided by 5 is 2 remainder 1, and the denominator stays the same. 7 divided by 4 is 1 remainder 3, and 5 divided by 3 is 1 remainder 2. So notice here the whole numbers are different. These two fractions have a whole number of 2, but these two fractions have a whole number of 1. And if the whole number is smaller, then the number will be smaller. So it's one of these two fractions that's our biggest fraction. Now we could find equivalent fractions for 1/6 and 1/5, so perhaps we could change both of these to fractions with a denominator of 30, because 30 is in the 6 times table and in the 5 times table. But we don't need to do that, because if we look at our numerator, we have the same numerator. We have 1 as our numerator for this fraction and for this fraction. So we can remember that the smaller the denominator, the larger the fraction will be. That's because if we have a smaller denominator, then our whole has not been split into as many pieces, so each piece is larger. And that means 11/5 is our largest fraction, because it's equivalent to 2 and 1/5, and that's larger than 2 and 1/6. Mark with arrows the points minus 1.5 and 0.45 on the number line. So we can see that on this number line, to get from 0 to 1, we have 10 lines. And that means that each of these little lines represents an increase of 1/10, or 0.1. So minus 1.5 will be 5/10 before minus 1, so that will be this point here. That's minus 1.5, because minus 1.5 or minus 1.5 will be right in the middle of minus 1 and minus 2. But now we need to mark 0.45. So this line here will be 0.4 because that's 4 lines from 0 and each of these lines is 1/10, and this line here will be 0.5. But remember, 0.4 is the same as 0.40. We can put zeros on the end of decimals without changing the value of the number. So if this is 0.40 and this line here 0.50, that means 0.45 will be right in the middle. N stands for a whole number. 2n is greater than 30. 5n is less than 100. Write all the numbers that n stands for. So 2n means 2 times n. So 2 times the number has to be larger than 30. Now 2 times 15 is 30 because 30 divided by 2 is 15, but the number has to be larger than 30, so has to be more than 15. So that means our number has to be 16 or more. Now we're also told that 5n is less than 100, so 5 times the number has to be less than 100. Now 5 times 20 is 100, but we want something that's less than that. So the numbers have to be 19 or less, because if it's 20, 5 times 20 will not be less than 100, it will be equal to 100. And if it's more than 20, then this side will be greater than, not less than. So the first statement tells us the number needs to be 16 or more, and the second statement tells us that the number needs to be 19 or less. So that means n could stand for 16, 17, 18 or 19.